What the fuck?
TV respects me. It laughs with me, not at me.
You stupid.
Well, this is the new bottom. This is now the worst the MCU has to offer. Congratulations, Ms. Marvel finale, you're off the hook. And I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit here, but I'm sorry, in this case, I just can't wait until the end of the video. So let's just do the most important part right now. Guys, I don't have one single goddamn clue what the hell I just watched, but if it was not the most petty, infantile, narcissistic, insulting, self-indulgent garbage this studio has ever produced, then I don't know anything. This is the kind of episode you make when you're trying to get yourself blackballed from the industry. This is the kind of episode you make when you know you're getting canceled and you want to burn the house to the ground on your way out the door. We all knew these writers didn't care about the show they were making. They didn't care about the stories, didn't care about the characters or the comics, and they sure as hell didn't care about the fans. That was obvious from minute one. But what this episode proved, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that they didn't even care about their own work as supposed professionals. They didn't even care about finishing something they themselves started in a way that would be satisfying for anybody. No one's expectations for this finale were lower than mine, but at the absolute bare minimum, I figured the writers would at least not chuck the series itself out the window, would at least not completely abandon the narrative they were trying to do something with in favor of giving 25 gigantic middle fingers to the audience, one for every dollar that was budgeted to every single episode of this fucking catastrophe. When even the final episode of Batwoman made more of an effort to tell a story than you did, then it might be time to consider that maybe we've been in the fucking upside down for the last 9 weeks and didn't even realize it until now. From the first moment of this episode, it could not have been more obvious that the only thing the writers were concerned with was doing wacky, nonsensical bullshit to amuse themselves. And if it happened to piss a lot of people off in the process, all the better. The last episode ended with Jen getting doxxed by the Intelligentsia, her sex tape being shown to a gala full of people, She-Hulk going quasi-savage over it for half a minute or so, and being surrounded by damage control agents with guns. So you figure, okay, the way we got here was dumb as hell, but maybe the show is gonna start taking itself a little bit more seriously for their final episode, right? Nope, the exact opposite happens. Instead, the show doesn't turn into a farce, because calling it a farce is being much nicer than it deserves. Instead, it turns into such an absolute mockery of not just itself, but the MCU in general, that the fact that Kevin Feige didn't immediately pull a David Zaslav and throw this entire godforsaken shit show in the vault and throw away the key makes me physically ill. The episode begins with a kooky, LOL so random parody version of the intro to the Lou Ferrigno Incredible Hulk series from back in the day. You know, that good Hulk show that people actually liked? We're just gonna make fun of that, because it created so much fan support for Batwoman when those writers made fun of the Adam West show, didn't it? Oh yeah, I'm sure this thing can't miss. And it doesn't even make sense either. They make sure to do the "you wouldn't like me when I'm angry" bit, but the whole premise of the damn show has been that Jen doesn't get angry because she has total control of her anger. And even when she did finally get angry in the last episode, nothing bad really happened. Nothing the writers couldn't very easily walk back, at least. Oh, and about that, called it. I f***ing called it. I said in the last video that She-Hulk didn't do anything in her little rampage that she hadn't already done several times in previous episodes and gotten off scot-free each time. So the cliffhanger was likely just for show because she probably wasn't in that much trouble here. And lo and behold, what happened after that? nothing. She wakes up in a cell, Blonsky's old cell, because God forbid we build a new set, and after She-Hulk went on a rampage at a public event, caused loads of property damage, and put innocent lives in danger, the very first thing we learn is that the DA is not filing any charges and she's getting released. Problem solved. Just like that. Jen doesn't even have to be held responsible for her own actions. Worst thing that happens is she lost her job, which I also called, by the way. Not even a slap on the wrist, considering she was this close to popping a dude's head like a champagne cork. Male characters have been treated like the scum of the earth on this show for doing a lot less than what she did and been punished far worse for it, but I guess the same rules just don't apply to our strong female character because we only pretend to care about equality when it actually benefits us, don't we? Oh, but don't think there are no ramifications at all. There is one fun little nugget. Jen gets released on the condition that she wears a power inhibitor, which, if you'll recall, is something she already wanted to do in episode 1 when this whole thing started. So her punishment for those crimes she just committed is doing something she already wanted to do in the first place. The system works. Too bad the story doesn't. Because in episode 1, the Hulk inhibitor that Bruce invented was a one-time thing that even he, Bruce Banner, canonically one of the most brilliant scientists in the Marvel Universe, could not recreate. And it had only been calibrated for him anyway, so Jen was out of luck. Because apparently, that was the only power inhibitor of its kind. Except we found out a few episodes later that power inhibitors were commonly used technology, so Jen not getting one in the first episode made no f***ing sense. Now, her not using one afterward is what it is, because you could argue that she had to be She-Hulk to keep her new job. But she gets an inhibitor now, and it's not a super special Hulk inhibitor, it's just a normal run-of-the-mill everyday power inhibitor, and it works just fine on her. Meaning that Bruce never needed a super special prototype Hulk inhibitor in the first place. So Bruce looks like a jackass for even bothering with that thing, Jen looks like a jackass for not using one when she could have, nothing about this makes any sense at all, and we are not even 3 minutes in at this point. So even though the writers are bending over backwards to let Jen off the hook for, you know, all that stuff she did, she's still pissed off because she got doxxed and embarrassed by those damn trolls who had the audacity to say mean things about her on the internet, and damn it, that makes her angry, as it would anyone. But she's not just anyone, as Book correctly points out, she's an out-of-control Hulk, and that's the only thing people saw, hence the inhibitor. So now Jen can't be She-Hulk anymore, which she never wanted to be anyway, except when it was helping her get laid or feed her narcissistic ego, but she loses her job because being She-Hulk was literally part of the job. And the media's turned against her, which they already did an episode about, wherein the issue was quickly and easily resolved with no payoff or consequences whatsoever, and will be in this one too. Aren't we in for a treat? Jen does end up losing her house though, and has to move back in with her mom and dad, and sure, that kinda sucks, but hey, at least her mom is still alive, because the source material, so she's still doing better than She-Hulk from the comics would in this situation. And then we have the closest anything in the episode gets to an actual joke, Jen trying to do something smart. She's trying to track down the people behind Intelligentsia so she can sue them, but she just can't figure it out because the site's security is annoyingly airtight. Even though all diverse female BFF had to do to infiltrate the site was create an account and log on. You figure it out. But diverse female BFF correctly informs us that Intelligentsia is made up of exclusively dumb dudes who are bound to screw up eventually. So yeah, that's our big bad, everybody. A bunch of stupid idiots who will inevitably shoot themselves in the foot. Dear Lord, how will She-Hulk ever possibly prevail against impossible odds like this? Yeah, I know that one and hardship schmardships are basically the same thing. I don't care. Off. Then Jen's mom comes in and, apropos of nothing, shows diverse female BFF a video of college-age Jen shaking her ass and spanking herself. You know, because Jen hates getting catcalled. So her still-living mom doing still-living mom things annoys Jen, and then they see a video of asshole white guy, remember him, doing an interview where he says that him and Jen dated for a long time and she was a psycho way before she got those superpowers, for which he she blames her grandmother. We're not even 7 minutes in at this point. Although, in Asshole White Guy's defense, I'm pretty sure one of those things was true. I think you can guess which one. So Jen retreats to her room and talks to the audience about how she may have said she didn't want to be She-Hulk, but this doesn't feel right. But it's not because she actually misses being She-Hulk, it's just because she got screwed over and she feels spiteful about it. Which she all but says herself, so don't bother fact-checking me on that. She tries texting Bruce again, but he's still not picking up, so she decides to run away from her problems and go up to Blonsky's yoga retreat, sweat lodge, life coach, chicken farm place for a while. Cut to diverse female BFF, who is finally, at long last, developing her own character and her own identity independent of Jen Walters. Gotcha! I'm just screwing with you. No, Jen remains the focal point of diverse female BFF's entire existence. So she infiltrates the Intelligentsia site again, which is pathetically easy because remember, the Intelligentsia are very stupid. She posts the embarrassing spanking video. It's a big hit with all the misogynistic man babies, and before you know it, she's gotten herself invited to an in-person meeting of all the Intelligentsia commenters. Yes, it really was that easy. In the comics, Intelligentsia is an information sharing network for genius supervillains. This version is gonna be much stupider than that. So Jen arrives at the yoga retreat thing, and Blonsky isn't around, but the Wrecker is, and once again I have to remind you that that's what he's called, because even in his third appearance now, the writers still haven't bothered to tell the audience what his name is. Because male characters are just utilitarian. They don't need stupid things like names. He sets her up with a guest room where she chills out by reading a book of haikus that Blonsky wrote instead of being the fucking abomination, of course. Check out the Photoshop job on the cover of that book, by the way. Cheapest thing in the episode, and that's saying a lot. But haikus aren't scratching Jen where she itches, so she goes looking for Blonsky, who the Wrecker says is appearing at some event at the lodge. Gosh, I wonder what that could possibly be. Anyway, diverse female BFF doesn't have the right genitals to blend in at an Intelligentsia meeting, so she calls in a favor from Pug. And Pug really doesn't want to go in there, but he lets her push him around all she wants because, you know, he's a man and that's his job. A far cry from its comics incarnation, the Intelligentsia meeting is basically just a bunch of asshole randos off the street. But the really asinine part that I'm sure the writers thought they were being so sneaky about because they're fucking idiots is that nearly every line of dialogue in this scene reads like painfully generic blanket statements the writers literally copied and pasted from every Reddit thread you've ever seen. Here are some snippets that might sound oddly familiar to you. Why does there even need to be a She-Hulk? It's not like there's a He-Hulk. The ironic part being that He-Hulk wasn't even a thing until the writers made it one, not the fans. And Lady Thor? She just sucks. Not exactly an unpopular take since the movie came out. Read the room, idiots. And I'm not saying that because she's a female. I would have the exact same criticisms if she was a man. Superpowers should go to the best person suited for the job, which is said just as often about male characters as it is with women. Sit down. Yeah, where have we heard stuff like this before, right? And it's not just that these shameless hacks are using their $25 million an episode budgeted TV show as a vehicle to petulantly bitch about all the meanies on Twitter whoever stepped on their fifis, but the fact that they're being so transparent about it is the really annoying thing. You seriously couldn't think of any comments these guys could make that every member of any fandom in existence had not already heard so many times in the last 5 years that they've become massive cliches and have already been mocked sarcastically, spit back and weaponized against us countless times by 1,000 other members of the Girls Rule, Boys Drool party, many of them a lot wittier and more clever than you? Subtlety really is dead, isn't it? So who does Pug run into at this meeting of one-dimensional slack-jawed dipshits but Todd, the pretentious douchebag who keeps popping up for no apparent reason, so the reason pretty much had to be that he was evil. Is anyone really surprised? And Todd's a big fan of Pug. He thinks Pug rules. Not sure why. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first scene they've ever appeared in together. Whatever. Makes about as much sense as anything else in this thing. Anyway, turns out Todd Todd created Intelligentsia, and he is Hulk King. So Hulk King was not Josh after all. I got that part wrong. Really wish I hadn't though, because suggesting that Todd, a guy the show had already written off as a total clown multiple times, is the big bad of the season instead of literally anyone else would certainly be the most pathetic thing to happen in this episode if it had stopped here. But it didn't. And oh my God, does it get worse. So they complain about She-Hulk some more, with Pug haplessly trying to fit in with everybody. Then Todd gets up on the stage and self-congratulates the Intelligentsia for posting Jen's cable bill online and proving to the world that She-Hulk is a giant slut for enjoying sex with an attractive consensual partner she was in a relationship with at the time. Yeah, you really got her good with that one, homeboy. And then Todd introduces their guest speaker, the Abomination, who walks in slapping high fives with everyone like a total jackass, and then launches into some generic motivational speech life coach shtick that has nothing to do with the Abomination, She-Hulk, the Intelligentsia, or literally anything. It honestly plays like Blonsky has no idea what this event even is. So I don't know if Blonsky was confused or the writers were confused, but no one's more confused than me. Are you serious? This you spent money on CGing? The Abomination being a motivational speaker to a bunch of sock puppet incels? He can do that, but he can't be a supervillain or do absolutely anything the character is supposed to do? I get that the whole point of using the Abomination was just to humiliate the crap out of him and make him look ridiculous, but did you really not know or care how f***ing dumb this was gonna make your show look? Stupid question, of course you didn't. And while I'm on the subject, why in the world does the Abomination have Tim Roth's normal voice? You really couldn't take 5 seconds to deepen that or make it sound in any way not ridiculous? That works with the Hulk because Ruffalo's got a deep voice, but Tim Roth sounds like Tim Roth. I'd call this cartoonish, but most cartoons would be smart enough to not do this, or at least make it funny if they did. Then Jen walks in, and the questions start. Questions the writers had no intention of answering. Why is Blonsky turning into the Abomination? Oh, he does it for speaking engagements? You. In an earlier episode, the authorities were alerted when his power inhibitor went offline, but now all of a sudden they're not? Why? Beats me. Why is Blonsky turning into the Abomination in the first place when that had nothing to do with the speech he was giving to these jackasses? Beats me. Even the posters they put up promoting his appearance are posters of Tim Roth. So why isn't he just appearing as regular Blonsky? Beats me. The only real explanation would be that him reforming was all an act and he's going back to being a villain now. But he's not. He really did reform apparently, and he's only appearing as the Abomination at this thing because the writers wanted a bunch of LOL so random garbage to happen here, not giving a rat's ass that it didn't make any goddamn sense at all. Then diverse female BFF barges in. OMG, Jen, this is the Intelligentsia. Todd is Hulk King. Then Todd brags about how he hired Josh to steal Jen's blood. Josh, who, for anyone keeping track, does not even appear in this episode. And now Todd is going to use Jen's blood to give himself Hulk powers. And sure, Bruce already told us that him and Jen turn into Hulks because of their incredibly rare super special genes, and the chances of anyone else having that are like 1,000,000 to 1 or something, but f that noise. Continuity doesn't mean shit because it's time to embarrass the f out of yet another male character by turning Todd into this. Somewhere off in Hollywood, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's Scorpion King is watching this and laughing his pincers off. Then Titania shows up. For what possible reason, I don't know. She literally just smashes through the wall and poses for the camera. Then the Hulk shows up. Just drops right through the ceiling. Hi, I'm back from Sakaar. Let go of my cousin, asshole. So him and Abomination start fighting. Titania's throwing dudes around even though they hate She-Hulk as much as she does, so that makes no sense. In fact, none of this shit makes sense. And that's not me complaining. The show flat out admits it. What is even happening here, says Jen. This is a mess. None of these storylines make any sense. Her exact words. And yeah, it's very true. But unfortunately for these dumb acknowledging how shitty your writing is doesn't mean that your writing isn't shitty. It just means that you're lazy pieces of shit who didn't give a shit about how shitty it was. And then wow. This might have been the most inexplicable thing I've ever seen. The writers decide to take breaking the fourth wall to a literal context when the show cuts to the Disney Plus menu screen. Jen snaps off her power inhibitor, because that's exactly the kind of thing the government would make sure is easily breakable, right? She-Hulk smashes through the icon of the She-Hulk streaming show, swings along some of the other icons until arriving at and smashing through the Marvel Assembled icon, and lands on the Disney backlot in the real world. What the f***? Deadpool would be lucky to get away with this shit. And Jen, Deadpool, you ain't. Then it gets stupider. So Jen walks around for a minute until she finds what she's looking for, the She-Hulk production office. She goes in and confronts the showrunners in the She-Hulk writer's room. I am not making this up. Holy gods, I wish I was. Jessica Gao and co. threw out a story they couldn't even be bothered to finish, bent the laws of reality over the table and sodomized them with the Infinity Gauntlet just so they could put themselves in the show and pat each other on the back for doing something fucking Ryan Reynolds would have thought was too on the nose. Then Jen starts complaining to the writers about how shitty the finale is. What kind of stupid finale is this? Her words! So yeah, they were 100% aware of how fucking dumb this trash was. They just didn't care. And they are throwing the fact that they didn't care in our fucking faces. Because insulting your own fan base is a surefire path to success in Hollywood in 2022. In a weird way, you almost have to be impressed, because this right here is raising narcissism to a goddamn art form. If you ever wondered why Jen is such a raging narcissist, you just got your answer. Look no further, because she is the blatant, transparent, unapologetic self-insert of every single spiteful, infantile, no-talent, self-indulgent, jackass hack in that room. One of them actually has the balls to say that there are certain things that are supposed to happen in a superhero story. Well, yeah, and you sure as hell haven't been doing any of those things for the last 8 episodes, so why start now? Jen thinks, screw that, they should just do things their own way. But they say Kevin wouldn't like that. So Jen goes to talk to Kevin. This is not going where you think it is. It's so much worse than that. She goes to Kevin's office, but the guy at the desk sounds the alarm, so She-Hulk can have her one and only action scene in her own finale, beating up a bunch of security randos. And I swear, I'm pretty sure she killed at least one of them. Until finally she enters the office to meet the one responsible for the entire MCU, which tragically includes She-Hulk now, so the writers are trying to let themselves off the hook for that one. Knowledge Enhanced Visual Interconnectivity Nexus. Kevin, who is a fucking AI robot. For context, they're basically ripping off the scene from Matrix Revolutions where Neo meets the architect, except this scene is 10,000 times stupider, thinks it's being cute, and absolutely cannot stop flagellating itself about how cute it thinks it is. And this is the point where the episode gets so goddamn meta, even Mark Zuckerberg would tell them to knock it off. Kevin tells Jen to de-Hulkify herself, but to do it off-screen because the CG is expensive and the VFX team has moved on to another project. Get it? Wow, She-Hulk writers, that was really funny. It was so incredibly funny, I forgot to laugh for 9 straight weeks. So they do a bunch of jibber-jabbering about cutesy-poo, self-aware idiocy that the writers thought was a lot more clever than it really was, until Jen openly acknowledges how unoriginal and derivative the Hulk blood creating more Hulks thing actually is, and then launches into a bizarre soliloquy about how Marvel movies all end the same way, which seems like something Marvel probably wouldn't want to call attention to if the higher-ups were paying closer attention to this, because they're all following some unwritten rule about having an actual plot, So Jen proposes that her show not have a plot. And Kevin agrees. I feel like I could have used that gag like 20 times in this video. You see, Jen's quote-unquote reasoning is that the plot is distracting from the story of her life falling apart right when she was learning to be both Jen and She-Hulk, which is absolutely not what the fucking story was, but if you say so, Jen. So instead of doing any of that super lame plot stuff, Jen basically turns the finale into her own personal fanfiction. Todd getting Hulk powers? Pfft, no, take that part out. Bruce appearing from out of nowhere? Not on my show he ain't, and he doesn't need to explain where he's been or what he's been doing. That's dumb. He can do that in the movie. Gone. Abomination? I don't have to hold myself accountable for shit, but he sure as hell does. Oh, and let's get Daredevil back in there, because a woman has needs. Hey you guys, did I mention that She-Hulk smashed Daredevil? Up top, give it to me, give it to me. And then after she's reduced arguably the best and most deep and mature male character in the MCU to a thirst trap, she starts going on about all the Marvel characters with daddy issues and asking when the X-Men are showing up, and just stop. Stop. Just stop! It's not funny, it's not cute, it wasn't even clever when the Wachowskis did it, and that was 20 goddamn years ago! Can you please stop flipping the fans off while pretending to high-five them for 2 seconds and just get to whatever the hell the point of all this self-indulgent twat waffling is, for the love of God! The point was to bullshit and stall for time. The point was for the writers to give themselves a last-minute escape hatch, because as it turns out, they had backed themselves into a corner they had no idea how to get out of. No idea how to finish the story they themselves wrote, so they didn't even try. The point was just to distract the audience with a bunch of meta as fourth wall breaking nonsensical jackassery until the audience was so fucking flabbergasted by what they were watching that the fact that the story never actually fucking finished or even went anywhere at all went right over their heads. They cut back to behind the fourth wall, and faster than you can say Deus Ex Machina, everything has been wrapped up. There was no climax, there was no payoff to anything. The writers just went f it and hit the reset button. Todd's Hulk powers are gone, he gets arrested, Jen's suing him, then Daredevil shows up, he just drops out of the fucking sky, and again the characters have to remind us that Jen and Daredevil hooked up. My God, the writers are fucking 12-year-olds. Blonsky's going back to prison for 10 years for violating parole. Seems like that's the kind of thing we would have known about earlier if he'd been doing speaking engagements as the fucking Abomination. And then the Walters have a big family barbecue where Matt Murdock, that poor man, is getting the boyfriend treatment now. So God help him, this thing with Jen and Daredevil may be continuing for a while. Jesus fucking Christ, whose coffee did he piss in? And what's more, every woman on the screen seems to be hot for him. Jen's aunt, Titania, hi Daredevil. They're all trying to cozy up to him, you know, because Daredevil's the cool guy, and he's with Jen, who he's sleeping with, and now all the women are gonna be jealous of. And since Jen is the writer's self-insert, then it's almost like all the women are jealous of them because they're sleeping with Daredevil too.
That, my son, is a lifetime achievement at the Cunt of the Year Awards.
For this, we lost the Netflix Daredevil series. And that might be the most depressed I've been since Batwoman was renewed for a 3rd season. Wow. Would you believe it's still not done? Turns out not giving Bruce a chance to explain what he's been up to this whole time was pretty dumb, because then Bruce just walks in to close the scene out being all, "Hi guys, I'm back from Sakaar. Meet my son." Then Scar walks into the frame, and they cut away. That's how they introduced the son of the Incredible Hulk. The capper to the Planet Hulk arc, one of the best and most popular Hulk stories from the comics in many years, and that's how they introduce him. "Hi, I'm back from Sakaar. Meet my son." I heard somewhere that Episodes 8 and 9 had undergone extensive re-edits at the last minute to rejigger stuff and remove various things as a response to the audience thinking the show was not so great. And after watching this, it's got me thinking, if this was the stuff they thought was good enough to be left in, what in the name of all that is holy did they cut out? I'm genuinely morbidly curious about this. I'm sure there's no answer to that question that's gonna make me happy, but I feel like Elliot Spencer holding the goddamn lament configuration in my hands. I know in the pit of my soul that no good can come from this, but don't you kind of want to see what happens anyway? So the writers wave a magic wand and abracadabra, Jen is cleared of her previous conviction because f*** it, why not? She's taken Todd to court, so I guess she got her job back too. Makes it easy. Apparently the media loves her again because God forbid we drag that out for more than half an hour, and she actually has the balls to tell an interviewer that people like Todd Phelps have to be held responsible for their actions. But not people like Jen Walters, am I right? The message is that if you attack, harm, or harass innocent people, I'm coming for you. But if Jen herself attacks, harms, or harasses innocent people, all three of which she did in this episode, by the way, she faces no consequences whatsoever. Go f*** yourself. And the season concludes, thank the f***ing Lord, with Jen saying that she'll be coming for them as Jen and as She-Hulk. I guess signifying that she's finally reconciled the two different parts of her life and learned to embrace her dual nature, which would have made a lot more sense if that was the story they had told, but it wasn't, so it doesn't. How exactly did Jen's arc build up to this? It didn't. I mean, her arc, and I use that word very loosely, barely existed to begin with. What the hell was it even supposed to be? She started the show resenting the She-Hulk identity and wanting to be rid of it, and that never really changed. Again, the only times Jen ever showed an appreciation for being She-Hulk was when it was helping her get laid or massaging her ego. All the other times? Where was it? Where was this growing appreciation? I didn't see it. She complained about it constantly. She didn't like that it was causing her a lot of problems, but she never really embraced what being She-Hulk could do for her. Unless it was helping her get an orgasm, she always ended up focusing on the stuff she didn't like. That's why it made no sense when she was bummed out that she couldn't be She-Hulk anymore. Because on the show I've been watching, that should have made her happy. And the reason why she wasn't happy wasn't even really about She-Hulk. She was just mad that she got screwed over and lost something that she didn't even want until she couldn't have it anymore. This show wasn't about Jen organically falling in love with being She-Hulk. It was about Jen being a petty, possessive, childish dipshit. And if that's not an accurate depiction of the fucking infantile mindset of these writers, I don't know what is. Then in the stinger, Wong portals Blonsky out of prison and off to Kamartage because he doesn't care that this is illegal and the law doesn't apply to Wong either, apparently. Off. That's the end of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, and my God, what a mess. This wasn't a Captain Marvel situation where they took a character no one really liked based on comics that didn't really sell and made a movie no one really cared about 2 weeks after it dropped. She-Hulk is a beloved character with acclaimed and popular runs in the comics, not to mention you had a massive budget, some very talented guest stars, and a lead actress who could have been up for the task if you'd given her literally anything to work with that hadn't been filtered through Jessica Gao's bile duct first. There was no reason why this show couldn't have been good. Instead, it wasn't long before I started brainstorming ways Marvel could retcon this brain cell destroying trash fire out of my and the entire MCU's misery. And the writers basically doing exactly that to their own fucking story in this episode accomplished nothing but stoking that fire even more by flippantly insulting the very fans they should have been playing to this whole time, because how dare the fans think a TV show should have a fucking plot? I mean, who the hell do they think they are? Paying customers? Jennifer Walters was probably the worst written protagonist in the history of the MCU. Tatiana Maslany is very likable and talented and could have been good in this role, but any charm she has was utterly wasted by the writer's vapid, asinine insistence on playing political games and turning the character, and by extension the show, into a vehicle for these smug, puerile, cud-chewing, paint-sniffing dorks to project their their own loathsome selves onto the character, tell stories about their own miserable, worthless lives instead of adapting the comics they obviously never read, and relentlessly bitch about mean tweets, incels, and every man who ever had the audacity to breathe the same air as them. The supporting cast might as well not have even been there for all the writers gave a shit. They got no development to speak of, and their storylines were almost non-existent. Even after 9 episodes, I'm still struggling to remember what Diver's female BFF's name even was. I think they might have mentioned it in like 2 episodes maybe, but hell, she should count herself lucky that she even had a name at all. That's more than some other characters got. Just about every male character who wasn't Jen's dad only existed to be vilified or humiliated, with Daredevil being the one exception, but he wasn't immune to that either, and his importance was ultimately written off as Jen Walters' boy/arm candy rather than anything his actual character could have to offer. Most of the episodes were disposable plot of the week crap that didn't go anywhere, and the writers gave so few shits about the flimsy ass narrative they actually did try to build for a while that they just snapped it all away like fucking Thanos when the finish line was 10 yards away, just hoping that the audience would be so mesmerized by them dangling something shiny in front of them with their fourth wall breaking fuckery that the audience wouldn't realize or wouldn't care that they obviously had no idea how to end the story they themselves started. And isn't it just fucking priceless that Jen barges into the real world to tell the writers that their ending sucks, and then her bright idea is to just skip the ending altogether? Brilliant. There was barely any action in 9 episodes. When there was action, it was almost always lousy, and the best action scene of the whole damn season didn't even have She-Hulk in it. It was a comedy that wasn't funny, a lawyer show that knew nothing about lawyers, a superhero show that thought superheroes were dumb. It had all this shit every godforsaken week, and in the end, the only result was that it took a character I like in the comics and made me absolutely dread her next appearance in the MCU, whenever that may be. She-Hulk Attorney at Law was awful. Awful! The worst thing in the MCU, bar none, period. By the end, even the writers seemed to acknowledge how bad it was, and the fact that they made it abundantly clear that they didn't even care and put it out into the world anyway is the most bitter pill of all. Every single cell of every single frame of every single second of this stinking turd fest, and every single person responsible for it. F*** She-Hulk. I'm out. Thanks for watching, and while you're here, please do all the other YouTube things. Ding the bell icon and follow my social media so you can always be notified when I upload new stuff. I also have a live streaming channel. Links to everything are in the description box. And most importantly, give the video a thumbs up, leave a comment. It really helps out with the algorithm. Take care, stay tuned. I'll see you next time.